Hi everyone. I am here today to discuss with you and my dear friend Zivar, who is coming on now, the new moon that we have just come into, the new moon of Adar. This year it's the second month of Adar, and Zivar is going to speak a little bit more to that. I hope she comes on soon. I hope you're all well. I hope you're feeling safe and peaceful wherever you are in the world coming to this. Zivar and I were a little bit torn as to whether to have this conversation today, but we felt it was so so important to come together and gather and share this collective spirit of faith and hope and light. And thank you for being here with us. And I'm sure she's going to be on in a moment. We are dipping into the rhythm of Jewish time and the Jewish cycle. And each month brings to us a different opportunity to explore something new within ourselves, to evolve, and to grow. So Zivar is joining us now. She'll be on in just a second, should technology work its magic. Hello, my love.
Hi, how are you?
What a morning. I think I just mumbled through the last 2 minutes before you came on. So I wish I could edit that out, but it's where we are.
You're like at the hard morning time, and I just finished the bedtime,
Yes,
like the
yes.
ends of parenthood, of motherhood.
You actually look refreshed and calm, no matter what just happened.
Thank you. You know what? It was warm today in New York, and so I was in the sun, which helps.
So beautiful. I see all those hearts coming up. So maybe someone else was there too,
Ooh,
enjoying that sunshine. That's so, yes, I feel like so much energy from you is coming into that spirit of springtime and shift and transformation, which is really the essence of this time.
it really.
And I happened to mention before you arrived that we both felt at times hesitant to come and talk about Adar tonight, but that we both felt so committed to the idea that this gathering and this reflection and this tapping into an ancestral wisdom and a God-given rhythm would help us all find more groundedness, find more peace, and show up with a lot of faith and a lot of light and a lot of hopefulness. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that even in the most difficult hours, we have to show up. Like there's a part of me that wanted to hide today, and I think the excuse was that there's just so much noise in social media around what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in the world. And I was like, I don't want to add to the noise. But the noise, there's many octaves of noise, of sound. And, um, when I used to gather in moon circles every month, there was so much prayerfulness. And like, when is prayer not helpful? When is it not in support of these mothers and children and all those who are affected? And Zach said something really interesting, and I shared it with you. He's like, there's so much fear coming at them because everyone's so afraid for them that, and that's not what they need actually. Like they need to feel held, they need to feel supported, they need to feel like we're like witness and like, can courageously be included. So here we are. Here we
here
are.
we are. I know, and as you were saying that, I really imagine this collective circle around the world holding space for that courage and bravery that we see just sparking up and flourishing in that pocket of the world. And, as we are moving into Adar, and it's the month of Purim, and you and I have discussed this, that it's almost impossible to ignore the similarities between the spirit of this time and the energy that was brought up in the story of Purim and the actions of Queen Esther and so many of the other protagonists, and what's happening today in the Ukraine. And the idea that Esther came to that point in the story where it was said to her, maybe you were brought here for a time such as this. Maybe you were brought to this position that you're in exactly for this moment. And not only do we see their leadership stepping up in a way that really allows them to take on the challenges of the time, but all of these ordinary people around the Ukraine who are asking themselves that same question of what am I here for? What am I meant to be doing in this moment? What is my highest purpose? What is the most valuable thing I can contribute? And in that spirit, they're also finding reservoirs of faith and reservoirs of strength and resilience and power that they otherwise may not have had to even bury into and find. And this idea of stepping beyond the limitations of what we imagine our world is, what we imagine our capacity is, and together with that, holding space for a divine power to work through us is so much the spirit of this time and so much what we're witnessing happening across the world with our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I was thinking about this month of Adar, and it's so easy to talk about uncertainty. So just to give a little, just take a step back.
Yes, let's warm into Adar.
Yeah, because it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot. So it's the last month of the Jewish calendar year, right? It's like, and in a lot of different systems, it's the last month because spring is the next month. We're going into Aries season. We're going into Nisan. We're going into the newborn. And so Pisces or Adar is the last moment in the cycle of the wheel of the circle. And so there's death, there's chaos, there's grief, but there's also the seeds of rebirth happening at the same time. So there's so much happening. And it's an accumulation of all the moons that came before, and they're all kind of sitting out like costumes, and we can try on the costumes of all the different months. And then as we move into Nisan, we're naked. We're like the newborn again. And so I was thinking about how it's so easy to talk about uncertainty and death and grief and chaos when it feels safer, and right now, like to be able to say that the medicine of this month and the medicine of the chaos and the uncertainty of the world is laughter or is like play feels heartless on some level, and at the same time that's the directive. And so I've been thinking a lot about what that, it feels so tactile this year. It's like not over there in the ether. It's like literally the reality of what we're living through, and it's an opportunity to practice and to like show up, to not be like, yeah, great, like there's grief, there's death, great, like we're gonna laugh at it, but like, oh wow, like we're being faced with these images. What does laughter even mean in this context? What does play mean? What does all of that mean?
Yes. And how do we tap into our joy despite that fear and really the collective ambience of worry and pain and suffering that is transpiring around the world? Zivar, someone just asked above, they said, why is Rosh Hashanah later in the year? And I just wanted to clarify that there is like the Jewish calendar is based on a lunar calendar and a solar calendar combined. And so our counting of the months by the moon begin in Nisan, which is the month of Passover. So that's where we take our counting of the months from. But then our year starts on the 1st of Tishrei, the new year we call it, for man, starts on the 1st of Tishrei, which is when we're celebrating Rosh Hashanah. So there are sort of these two points of the year, 6 months apart, which are very parallel in many ways, but which each offer a new spirit of rebirth. And do you want to talk a bit more to that?
Yeah, so the Kabbalists talk about, they ask this question, like, why do we have 2 New Years? Why do we have the New Year of Nisan and Aries and springtime, and then the New Year of fall, of harvest, of going into hibernation? And I think it's so beautiful. It's in Sefer Yetzirah. Basically, when God created the world, so think of God as the mother, like creation, the creator. Um, Tishrei, or the high holidays, was a moment of discernment. Like, oh, I want to create the world. Like, oh, I want it to be to happen. And so there was like a lot of discernment or judgment or question and how to organize the world. And then Nisan is the actual birth of the world. It is like the compassion that brings forth the world. And so we move from this like little kind of the seed that gets planted in the fall to the full expression of the world in Nisan. And so that's why we have those 2 New Years. One is created from discernment or judgment, and then in Nisan, it's the month that's created through mercy, right? Like the Israelites leave Egypt because of God's compassion. So
Yeah.
so we're moving into the new year, the compassionate or the literal birthing of the year.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And in many ways, Adar, the month we're in, parallels Elul, because Adar leads into the new year of Nisan and Elul leads into the new year of Rosh Hashanah. So the same way we have this period of self-reflection and in many ways a return, because as you said, we're trying on these different garments of the year, or we're taking them off and seeing what each of them revealed within us. We're peeling back our onion, or shedding the snake skin at this time. It's in the same way a return to self, a return to essence, the same way we try to do at the other new year in Elul and Tishrei, but with a different spirit.
And it's interesting to me, like, I never thought about that, or I wasn't thinking about the Elul as the prelude to that new year, and then Adar as the prelude to birth. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like when you're in a place of judgment or discernment or trying to figure out how you want to create something, you need to bring a lot of loving kindness to it. And Elul is all about like love, like I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me. It's like a softness. And
Yeah.
actual birth, which we've talked about before in lives, it's like you need a lot of power. You need a lot of like, and and Adar has that quality to me. It's like all the chaos and all the stuff and and it's like we're gonna like blast into this new space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's interesting because both months carry this spirit of returning to our essence so that we can come through naked, reborn, renewed. And in Elul, with that softness, there's a solemnity to it, right? It's quite a serious time of introspection as we move into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and that new year. And
Yes.
yet in Adar, we're told to be playful and joyful. And we find ourselves maybe at that time by being quiet, Elul, by being quiet and that peacefulness. And yet in Adar, it's through our joy, it's through our expression, it's through losing ourselves in movement and playfulness that we find a new self. I used to do the 5 rhythms. I don't know if you ever went to five
Oh,
rhythms.
did I love
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we for sure danced past one another, right?
that.
Um, and like it was that, and really in any form of exercise, but that sort of like ecstatic, improvised dance, especially. Um, you lose yourself, and yet you find a new part of yourself because you've lost yourself in the action of the dance and the movement and the energy, and the rhythm. You let go. So I feel like Adar's letting go is through expression and that build up of energy that allows us to release and just emerge with a
Beautiful.
new breath and a new aspect of understanding, which is different to the way we have to find ourselves in our law.
It's feels like the mind and the heart, right? Like it
Mm.
quality. Um, my doula, who's one of my closest friends, Yiska, she's been at like, over 300 births. And she said, you always know when a woman is like really in labor, when she does not care if she's naked, does not care if she's clothed, has no
Yeah.
sense of anything other than like, I'm in my body, like nothing else matters. And I think there's something about that, like that Adar energy of like, I can just be in like the play without, or the absurdity without any reflection of what's happening outside of me.
Right.
And I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, I'm always thinking about different things, but about archetypal energy, right? Because the story of Purim happens in Persia. I'm actually half Iranian, and my family's very connected to the story of Purim. And I know you have some Persian in you, but um, the it well it happened, but there's also the reason why they're passed through is because they have this archetypal nature to them, that there's something valuable that we need to learn about their character and how we show up in the world. And I was thinking, Carolyn Miss, who's a teacher of mine, says that um, archetypes are patterns of power, which means that when you see something, like you see someone walking down the street, you sort of like label them. Oh, they're wearing this, they're wearing that. Okay, they're this powerful, they're not this powerful. And we begin to make sense of the world based on like power, like who has power, who doesn't have power. Um, and often the definition is very cultural, right? It's like, oh, that person has money, they have power. Oh, they're wearing this, they have power. And what I love so much about the story of Purim and Esther is like when it was written and when it happened way back when, here's like a beautiful young girl who no one probably looked to in that era of like, she's going to save the world. She's going to save us. She's going to save the community. And there's something so profound to me about like the flipping on its head of the archetype. Like usually we see like the hero, like the Mordecai, like someone's going to come out of left field and take everyone. But it was Esther. And to me, like, I love the question of like, challenging our archetypes of what we think is powerful. And like what you said, it's like maybe we try on all these costumes of like, I'm going to be the artist, I'm going to be the mother. And then you arrive like naked and you're like, well, who am I outside of all of that? And Esther becomes the teacher of that. Like she didn't even know her own power. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Coming back to that idea of we each have a reservoir within us, which is so much more profound, so much more wondrous than we can ever imagine, and that we limit ourselves to these roles that we have in our mind, that we think we need to play because of what we're taught by our families, by our culture, by our media. And as you were saying that, it reminded me that when you spoke about, Esther becomes the teacher of that, and maybe an unwilling teacher, even at one point in the story, seems unwilling or unaware of that power that she carries, even though she has this remarkable proximity to the king and this role. But as we talk about Adar being the end of the year and Nisan being the beginning, I realized last year that Nisan it's the story of Moses, and Moses is surrounded by these women, right? He's surrounded by his mother and Miriam, so Yocheved and Miriam, and Bitcher draws him from the water, and then there's Zipporah. There's this like army of women who are holding space for this baby who will grow into the man that leads the Jewish people and influences us for generations and generations and generations, and is responsible for this like spiritual download, which wisdom came through, like gushed through into the world. And then we end our year with Esther, very similar to Moshe again, right? Unwilling, in the palace, ends up in the palace by no choice of her own. It's like God's hand that places them each there. Doesn't understand her power. And then who is she surrounded by? Mordecai and Haman and Ahasuerus, all of these male characters, not all of whom are supportive, but all of their characters, or those archetypes, are the foundation for her to emerge and for her to draw this feminine energy into the world. And it says, she was dressed in Malchut. She was dressed in this, not only her queenly dresses, but the capacity of Malchut as a sphira, as a divinely feminine energy through which she could channel a new way of being into the world, and she could show up and fulfill this role. And you know, we'll talk more about what that miracle of Purim was and how it manifested. But we move from the masculine, the feminine supporting the masculine seed to grow into the very opposite at the end of the year.
Yeah, that
And so,
bookend of each other.
yeah,
The reluctant hero of the story. And it's like, also to me, the beauty, like that she used her beauty for her power, right? And like there can be hesitance around that. It's like where you're not allowed to express your beauty because like whatever, that's superficial or whatever it is, but like that she was able to use in some ways her whole self
mm,
for who she was, and she didn't have to shame one part of herself or keep one side like, oh, we're going to tether this down. And for me, like, there's something about Adar. It's like to just laugh in the like. So the first time laughter is ever mentioned in the Torah, it's when Sarah finds out that she's having a baby at 99 years old. She's like, what the heck? Like, you got to be kidding me. And it's like Sarah laughed. And then therefore she named her son like Yitzchak, which is like, and so for me, like when I think about like that the medicine, or that the Kabbalists would say that the medicine of this month is laughter, like it's not laughter like ha ha ha, it's like the absurdity of things. Like that things are so absurd and insane and like wild. And I think sometimes we like exile parts of ourselves that would feel absurd, like that feel like they don't have a place in a culture that like wants us to be a certain way. And I wonder what it would be like to bring out the absurdity, of all that. And I think part of the reason why we wear costumes is like you get to see people's real essence, like what costumes they choose.
right, right. Yeah,
Why
so
they,
true.
know?
Yes, and it gives us a freedom and a courage to like explore these different parts of ourselves that we may push to the periphery when we're so locked into our fixed mindset of how we should behave and who we should be in the world. But but yes, that idea of it becoming so absurd that we can sort of move beyond the confines of how we normally think the balance is,
And
what we
that
normally think the balance
is all about the fish, right? The two fish back. It's like there's a fluidity of like, there's this Piscean myth that they're kind of like they're not quite here. They're here and there and everywhere. And
Yeah,
um, so absurdity to me also like holds fear. It's like laughter and fear at the same time.
yes.
Like I can be so afraid, and at the same time I can laugh in the face of that. It's like very Piscean to me, of like this like,
Mm,
and to me like that is the ultimate, in a lot of different traditions, in the Kabbalist tradition and Buddhist tradition, it's like not knowing the distinction between that, to be able to hold like I can be sad and happy, and it's the same. I can be even in like I can be the same person in both places.
mm, yeah. It's also this sense of relinquishing control and not knowing, when we realize the absurdity or the mystery or the unknowing of the universe, of our lives, we move, more seamlessly through between those spheres of like laughter and grief and tears and all of these emotions. And there's a letting go in that process, because really when we step back, so much of our lives are trying to piece together and control and organize and make sense. And Purim is kind of letting that go. Can we make sense of it all? We can't always hold the pieces together. And it requires so much more strength to have that openness and let go, because when we're afraid and when we're, more insecure, that's when we clutch, that's when we hold on to our identities, and it has to be this way and I have to appear this way. This is how I need to be in the world, or this, this makes sense to me, this is safe.
Right.
But through our strength and through our courage, we can let that go. And like the fish, anything can happen. We can laugh, we can cry, we can evolve, we can be something new. And that's so empowering.
I have a question for you. um,
I'm like, what's she gonna ask?
it's so funny when I people they know that like I don't let people leave without sharing a little bit about themselves. It's like part of the contract. But I guess I have a question for you, which is, what costume have you worn that maybe you've clenched in the past because there was because it wasn't actually the right fit, but it felt like it needed to be. Um,
Mm.
and what is that costume, and are you willing to let it go?
So what costume have I worn through my life
Or maybe even just through the
that I've
year.
maybe outgrown?
Yeah. Or that never felt right, but that was just
Mm.
that someone said, here, wear this. This is who you are.
Mm. I would say it's something that I'm still evolving and outgrowing, but the the obedient good girl, right? I'm a first child, and I always did what I needed to do to keep the peace.
Mm.
And as I grow and as I evolve, I'm discovering that that was more of a role that was like an expectation, saying yes all the time, right? Instead of saying no. So learning to trust that instinct of when to set up a boundary, when to hold back or say no, or be more protective of my own space or my own needs as opposed to pleasing.
Mm.
Yeah. How about you?
Um, I think that, there's so much reward given to woundedness, to being wounded, to being traumatized, to having gone through difficult things, which, like, our culture rewards it in a weird way. Like, oh, you were traumatized. Like, you get to be this person. You get to be wiser. You get to, I don't know. There's something about a worthiness that to me is attached to this, like, woundedness. And I feel sometimes that because it's so rewarded, it's easy to use as a flex. Like, oh, I had trauma. Oh, I had this difficult thing. So therefore, like, I'm more valuable, or you should listen to me, or my wisdom matters more. And for me, while the healing I've done has been so significant, and like I have had traumas, I'm ready to release that. And there's a part of me that like wants to clutch on it because it's like, well, that makes you a worthy teacher. That makes you a worthy healer. You get to be welcomed in a different way in like this kind of like more spiritual communities. And I'd rather like, I think people are so terrified of being whole because if they're not whole, then like people will need them or people will love them. But there's a, I just want to let go of that need to be wounded to be loved or to be seen or to be
Mm.
acknowledged as worthy. Um, yeah, I think that, and it's such an easy clutch, but it's not one that feels good actually anymore.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you every blessing in shedding that this Adar and this year.
Thanks, Mama.
Yeah. Um, you know, I was listening to this podcast by my beautiful friend Sarah, A Life of Greatness, and Tara Brach, who I know you adore as well, was speaking. And she told this story about a Buddha in Southeast Asia. And it was a really beloved Buddha, but it was it was a plaster Buddha. Like they didn't understand why so many people adored it when it was just made of plaster. And in the 1950s, they discovered like there was some cracks starting to emerge, and one of the monks looked inside the crack and he realized that the plaster was just a shell and the entire Buddha inside was gold. And it's the largest solid gold Buddha in Southeast Asia. And it was covered over probably to protect it from, you know, from thieves, from whoever might want to damage it or steal it. And how, you know, we each develop that plaster shell that covers the gold we have inside, through our vanities, through ego, in order to stay safe, as a result of our trauma and wounding, and how it's really just to protect us, right? That shell is just to protect us. But at some point, the cracks start emerging because we're hiding something. We're hiding our essence. We're hiding what's most valuable within us. And, you know, as we come to terms with each of these aspects of the roles that we played, and the shields that we have woven around us like armor, it gives us, like, Adar is the invitation, like you just said, you know, to move beyond that and to look more deeply within.
And to do it knowing that it's part of the process. Like, you know, I think the playfulness is saying that, like, it's human, like, we're human, like, we have shadows, like, whatever, like, that's part of it. We have cravings lead to shadow, like, that's just part of the deal. Like, you
Right.
know, things happen to you and you want to use them to, like, feel like you matter or whatever. And um it's, I think there's something like the levity of it is so nice because it could feel so heavy and it doesn't have to be so heavy, you know?
Right.
We're ending a cycle, and like it's a really big deal to end like a whole full cycle and to start again. Um, and like, can we, you know, I was thinking about that sort of seed analogy where the seed already has been planted in the fall. And so
Mm.
we think with our human ego brains, like, oh, like, I'm going to control this rebirth and this death and what's going to come next. But really, like, we've already planted it. And like, yes, we may have nurtured it or not nurtured it, but like, there's not much control over what comes forward in spring.
Right.
So like, whether we like it or not, like, we don't have control. And so can we enjoy that not controlness? Can we enjoy the lack of control? Or are we
Right.
hold on until the end and like grip and grip and grip? And someone said in the comments, and I loved it, it was like how she works with her own fear is to just continually letting go, like let go, go, let go. And yeah.
Yeah, and if we think about the ascension of the year, right? We've just moved through Shvat, and Shvat is about, you know, the water, like, and we talk about the alchemy of the nutrients moving up, the sap moving up in the tree, and that, creating of space. You know, even before that, we released our anger in Tevet. So all of these months have been sort of moving us into this spirit of open capacity, open heartedness. So that, as you said, we don't have a control over what's coming up, but we trust that we've done the inner excavation and sort of like smoothing out to allow whatever needs to come up in this time to reveal itself, and trust that whatever is revealing itself at this stage of our lives, at this stage of the year, is because we in some way have outgrown it, and it's like we're ready for it to be birthed, released, let go, so that a new part of ourselves can be understood and felt. um, and you were even reflecting that, you know, it feels so painful because right before birth our contractions are the strongest, they are the most uncomfortable, but we can trust that when we're getting to that pain, when it's so uncomfortable that we're feeling this issue come up or this identity need, like it's feeling too small for us, like that is the point that we can have the breakthrough.
Yeah, and it's easier with birth, right? Because you're like pregnant. You know it's coming. It's like at my again, the doula's like, either way, the baby's coming. Like you know,
Yeah.
like you don't have to worry. Um, and we don't have that, right? It's like, or we do, but we don't trust it. And so it's a whole other faith to be like, okay, like it feels really bad and really uncomfortable and really painful and so scary, and like we're going to be okay, or something's going to be okay, or it's a real practice.
Well, I think this is where we invite in the faith piece. So in Hebrew, the word for faith, emunah, is connected to the word omanut, art, and the artist, right? So the same way as an artist creates, not really knowing what the outcome is going to be, but hoping and trusting that the spark of inspiration that they felt will be channeled into the piece of music, into the painting, into the words, the expression, but they can never be sure what they're birthing through that process. And you just have to keep showing up for your art with faith. Like we keep showing up for our lives with faith. We keep showing up for this process of healing with faith, for this process of shifting identity. And faith was a huge part of the Purim story and what Queen Esther had to tap into in order to step up to that role and to make that shift and encourage her people to also show up.
Yeah, and it's kind of circling back to the beginning when you were saying like it's not something she chose, she was chosen. And you and I have talked about this privately about what does it mean to like arrive on the planet and having been chosen for a role or a path that maybe you don't feel that excited about, or that's complicated or complex. And so to not be a victim inside of that, and to be fullness of self inside that, and to say I can show up fully even though maybe it doesn't feel what I want it to feel, what it needs to feel. It's like that to me is faith, is like to say like I'm not gonna hide parts of myself in this moment, even though I wish it to be a different way. I'm gonna just like not
Yeah.
be the victim of this story, and I will show up as my full self and offer what it wants, what this life wants or what this moment wants. And and I also, in terms of like what's going on in Ukraine, and there's always something going on in the world, um, sometimes less heavy than others, but we all show up differently, and we differently because we're not all here to serve in this. And if we were all serving in the same way, nothing would ever get done. And so it's like, can we release all these costumes of like, I'm the first child and I have to be a people pleaser, or I'm the victim of this, or whatever story, anxious, it's like, no, that's a story that was put on you. You're too much, whatever. And it's like when we release all of that and we move into that nakedness, like you talked about, to me, there is a possibility of a new world because we're all showing up in service of what is right based on what we were actually born to do.
Yes, Zivar might want to speak to that, but yes, we're all showing up in service of what we were meant to do, and
And
there's a sense, yeah,
that's like the moving into the new cycle, right?
right, yeah. It's funny, like you come into this world obviously fresh and new and like tapped in so many ways, right? And as we build our identities, which we need to make sense of the world and keep us safe, we're forgetting that essence. And I just got this picture in my mind as adults, if we could just be reborn and start our lives where we were again with that fresh download, that fresh inspiration. And that's what we're trying to do at these sort of like anchor points of the year, is like, how can I tap into that flow, that sense of renewal, that life force which is pulsing in the world, in the universe, in our physical surrounding. How can I tap into that to feel in a way fresh and reborn, and like my potential is limitless, like it was the day I came to the world and no one knew who I was or what I could do and had every hope and belief in me. I mean, that's like for Judaism, like, and for obviously many traditions and many cultures, like the hopefulness that's placed on the children is that sense of who could they be? What wonder will they do? What will they create in the world? What new energy and healing and peacefulness are they going to bring? So how can we feel that about ourselves? That hopefulness.
And like, it, there's an elderhood to the Pisces because it's the last of the cycle. So it's normal and healthy to try on all the costumes and to be young. And, you know, like in my 20s, I tried on so many costumes, and I'm still hoping that like there are many costumes I get to try on. That comes with practice, and that also comes with, it's like both the newborn knows exactly who they are, and then you have to, then
Yes.
the earth school, which is really healthy and why we're here. And then at the end, hopefully we come back to the newborn, which is like, I know who I am. And that's literally why we're
Right.
here. It's like I know who I am. I'm here to serve.
I just got shivers. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like literally, like I'm gonna accumulate all this stuff. I'm gonna put on this. I'm gonna put on that. I'm gonna put on, and like you come to the end of your life, and it's like all this stuff, and then it's like, whoop, take it off,
Yeah.
start again. And like you said, it's available every year. It's available every moment. It's available in a lifetime, and they'll all be colored slightly differently. You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's interesting, like if you catch yourself in the mirror, undressing and dressing, and you see, like, even that physical aspect of covering ourselves up with clothing and having this awareness of the way we cover ourselves up with labels or trying things on through the course of our life. Someone before just asked for a new month ritual, and that sort of came to my mind, specific to Adar. Just like watching yourself get dressed and imagining all those layers. But what would you suggest as to, I didn't see who asked the question, I can't scroll back, but as new month rituals for Adar, Rosh Chodesh
But
rituals?
is it for Adar specifically, or is it for all of the moons?
I think it can be either.
Yeah. Oh, I could go so many places with this, but I think that for any new moon, it's really good to go outside and gaze at the sky and see its darkness and be aware of how dark it feels, and um, sort of just gaze at the sky. That's what I would do with new moon. You could put some water in a window and let like the moon start to like kind of filter and go into the water. And then on the next new moon, you could pour that water into the earth. That's a really nice ritual. For the moon of Adar, I actually think it would be really beautiful for you to go into your closet, find something that is a costume you've worn that you've, maybe it's like someone bought you a dress or whatever, and you look at it every time and you're like, this is not me. I don't feel, and give it away. Give it away.
Yeah, amazing. I feel free and released when you just said that, to just shed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think anywhere you're feeling uncomfortable in your life, this isn't so much a ritual as maybe an ongoing practice, but anywhere you're feeling discomfort, to start to ask yourself the question of like, what if it was the, like, what if it was the opposite? What if I release this? Why am I holding on to this belief? Why am I holding on to this mindset? Um, to start to question more in order to like shift those limiting beliefs, shift those fixed visions of the world. Because that's like really the breakthrough that we're coming into with Nissan, this like freedom that we're moving towards, freedom from any constrictions and boundaries. So the playfulness of Adar really warms us up to release in Nissan.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Nissan later, but like I always find this a very, even as a kid, I found this such a profound part of the story of the Exodus from Egypt, that like some people didn't want to go.
Yeah.
They stayed. They just didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to. They're like, I feel good. This slavery feels familiar to me. I'm just gonna hang out here, and like you guys go and find freedom, because freedom is really, really terrifying, and it feels really
Yeah.
unknown, and that's scary. I I think that it really is scary to like release all these labels of who we should be or how we should be and be like, I don't know who I am, or I'm outside of all of that and I don't know how to feel about that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another practice which
And I think
obviously is
sometimes
associated with the new. Oh yeah.
no, no, it's okay.
No, you go. You go. I was just
I
going to
was
say another ritual.
I
um,
at the energies that we clutch, like the things that we are grasping the most, are often the things that if we let go of them, we'd find a lot of freedom.
mm, yes.
You know, the thing that we crave the most or we desire the most, if we could just like let it go, that would make a lot of space, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. And as it intensifies, as that craving intensifies, like that's when we really know it's the most ready to be released.
Yeah, because a craving is just a desire for power, and power is like survival. It's like I'm alive, I'm here. And so if we can say like, oh wow, I'm craving this because I want to feel seen or I want to feel worthy or whatever it is, like um, it's helpful to engage with that question. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Like all the months are leading us to this self-understanding in a different, through a different lens, through a different angle. And trying to clear space for us to find divinity within, for us to connect more deeply and powerfully to one another, and releasing that mindset, that craving, that, or understanding it at least, even before you release it, just being familiar with it and knowing that it's there and that's just a part of your psychological makeup, or um, is allows us to continue connecting more deeply and to finding that divinity within. Um, and I wanted to speak just a little bit about presence as a pathway to finding joy. We tapped into it a little bit when we were talking about, just the spirit of being alive and the playfulness of Adar, which requires us to really be in the moment, and how we can find joy, which is different to happiness. It's not dependent on external factors. It's not a when I have it, I will be happy. It's not conditional. It's really just a sensational response to the moment that we're in, finding connection to the pulsing vibration of life around us. So is there anything you want to say about presence and joy, or how you access joy?
yes, I want to say that actually, my best thoughts come to me in the show. Maybe it's not my best thought, but I'll say it anyway. Pisces or Adar is all about the melding of opposites, right? So it's like we get so high on the energy of Purim that we don't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai, or all the sort of, or the Piscean energy of like fear and joy and everything's swimming and it's very kind of like murky, and the Kabbalists talk about this Piscean season as like the concealed reality. It's like everything that's kind of happening. And I've noticed over the last few years, especially, a sense of divisiveness of I'm here, you're there. If you're not here, I'm there. And there's a sense of separation, and the separation keeps getting greater and greater and greater. And that's not presence to me. Like, presence is not like I'm here, you're there, or if you're not this way, then we can't, there's no connection point. And, I saw it a lot with the pandemic. It's like people weren't allowed to have opinions that were nuanced. People weren't allowed to have thoughts that were nuanced. Being woke meant something, and we're not allowed to have questions or concerns. And while I think that we've moved the needle like forward in a lot of ways, I also think we've stepped back a lot. And for me, this Adar energy, this the medicine or the beauty that comes with this faithful Adar or Piscean season is like to be able to say that like both and, like yes and, like that everything can be happening at once and that we don't get to decide what things are or how things are. What we can do is to be present, to be joyful, to be grateful, to be in our wholeness, so that when we show up for other people, we can be a teacher in that way. So there's just this quality to me of like the real like sort of letting go or rebirth is like being able to hold that. Like that's to me a spiritual awakening. Is like to be able to say I can feel all of it at once, and that
Yeah.
like no wrong feeling or there's no wrong person or
Yeah. Um, to be at peace with the space of unknowing, in many ways. And I think increasingly we are needing to have an opinion, put an opinion out, because we all suddenly have all of these social media outlets in which we need to voice something, which will stamp out how we feel in the world and further carve an identity for who we are and how we associate and who we associate with and what team we're on. Um, and and that really works against what you were describing of the energy of and, because how nuanced can you get in 100 words, whatever it is on Twitter that your limit is, or your caption or your reel on Instagram. um, we're kind of being trained to be more focused in what we output, so it takes discipline to be comfortable with nuance, to present nuance, to be okay with not knowing or not having an opinion. And as you said, which is really so Adar, coming back to ourselves, to our essence, to feeling that wholeness and trusting that that will speak volumes beyond what a few words or a label can do.
yeah, it's like saying like F the labels, like this, and that comes with the wisdom of the finishing of the wheel. It doesn't start, we don't start there, you know.
Yeah, so true. So true. When you were speaking about the archetypes earlier, I had read something that Zivar Amrami wrote, and she's a journalist in Israel, but she was reading a book where she understood, or the writer was talking about all the characters of Purim being archetypes that live within us. We've got the Esther who might be reluctant to step up, but has that power to tap into her resources and invite in change and to be faithful and to find malchut. And then there's also the Haman within us, which might be bitter, or that shadow side looking for some power, feeling divisive, feeling separate. There's the Achashverosh, which is, maybe a little bit ignorant within ourselves. So finding all these parts of ourselves and these characters within ourselves is living in that nuanced place. We all have them.
Yeah. Right, and to say like I'm here, you're there, or that part of me is impermissible. I'm not allowed to talk about that. I'm not allowed to mention that. It's doing yourself and others a great disservice of like connection. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Maharaj. He wrote a book called I Am That, and he says, "The mind creates the abyss, and the heart crosses it."
Mm.
Like that's the mind's job, is to create discernment, is to create labels, is to categorize. But then like okay, so but then the heart should show up, and the heart gets to show up and be like, we have all of this inside of us, like we all have the good and the evil and the this and the that. It's like, how can we be more kind to ourselves and to each other in these moments?
And I think that, I hope that we're seeing that right now. Hearts are crossing the world. We're all feeling so connected to what's happening many, many, many miles and oceans and countries and borders away from where we're sitting. And as you said, there's always something going on in the world. So may our hearts continue to cross over and to never forget that connection, and also to never lose that capacity for courage and faithfulness that was modeled so beautifully in the Purim story. And really, we didn't really speak about it, but the idea that in the Purim story, Hashem's name is never mentioned, but we get this sense of the divine hand guiding the whole process, so much so that everything was flipped and reversed. Everything that seemed to be real was flipped by the end of the story, and those who were destined to die were put into positions of power, and those who built the gallows were hung on them eventually. So once again, this ability for Hashem to flip anything and change anything, and so that we should always feel hopeful. We should always know that potential for things to improve. Yeah.
Yeah.
And may it be so for these brave people across the world who are fighting for their lives right now. May they have the divine force working in its concealed but transcendent and ever powerful way to protect them and guide them and hold them at this time.
I always think may God hover in the moments of chaos as well as the moments of stillness.
Amen. Amen.
It's yeah. As mothers, we know this, I think, more than a lot. It's just such a strong practice of motherhood in the micro, which is that so much could be going on in my heart. I could be feeling so much grief and so much whatever, but I show up for my kids just because that's what you do, you know. And I think we all, in some ways, can be midwives and mothers and to the world around us. We can have all the feelings, that's all valid, but then we also show up, you know. Are we finishing up?
Yeah, but it's time, but what else is burning?
I before we go, I just wanted to finish with this. I used to go on these, if you allow me, I used to go on these meditation retreats, Vipassana retreats, silent meditation retreats, and one of the first ones I went on was with Jewish teachers, Jewish Buddhist meditation teachers. It was really beautiful, and they used the mantras of Shefa Gold. And there was one, so instead of like doing prayer in the morning, we would do these mantras, and one of them was Ozi Vizimratya Vayihi Li Bishua. And I was just like, it was playing in my head today, the mantra, that mantra, and it means that my strength and God's song will be my salvation. And there's something to me about my strength and God's song will be my salvation. It's like we both show up with will, and we do the work to let go. We do the work to try on the costumes. We do all that. And then we like allow God's song to like sing through and around us, and that saves us again and again and again and again. So
Amen. That is so beautiful. May we all find the spaciousness within to allow Hashem to play his music through us so that it can enrich the world. Amen. Thank you, Zivar. That was so beautiful. Thank you, sister.
thank oh showed up. We
Happy
did it.
Adar, everyone.
Bye.
Happy Adar. Bye.